outside of my opinion, right, if we look at the data, regardless of how I feel, negative determinants of youth mental health are the highest that they've been since we started measuring. Whether you're looking at youth suicide attempts, youth successful suicides, youth rates of anxiety, youth rates of depression, over 50% of kids say that they feel perpetually hopeless. Over 40% of kids say that they experience long-term feelings of loneliness. You look at this kind of landscape where kids have more technology than they have camaraderie. And that is not great for the brain.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Always Learning. Today, my guest is super fun, and he shares my love of costumes and superheroes and all of things weird. Tony Weaver Jr. is an award-winning writer and educator, creating diverse stories that make young people feel seen and heard and valued. And he's been on a mission to create new media narratives that challenge the status quo that we see in the world and that we see in schools. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the reality of back to school stress and mental health, especially for Black and Brown students, among other things. So first, welcome, Tony, and thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And the first thing I'd like to do is take a moment to turn it over to you and let you tell us a little bit about who you are, your journey as an author and educator, and the inspiring work that you're doing right now.
Oh, too many questions. There are so many things going on. I'm going to see if I can remember everything. So my name's Tony Weaver Jr. I wear a variety of hats. I think the ones that are most important in relevancy to this conversation are that number one, I wrote a book called Weirdo. It's currently going into its third printing, nominated for an Eisner Award and for a Harvey Award for Best Kids Publication. Weirdo is a graphic novel memoir that I call the Nerdy Kids Instruction Manual for Self-Love and Self-Confidence. It chronicles my personal experience overcoming suicide and learning to love myself as a young person in a world that doesn't make it easy to be yourself. I also get online and yap on social media to my audience of about 1.2, 1.3 million, specifically focused on how can the stories that we consume make us better people, but also what are the role that stories play kind of in an organized society? When I look at stories, I think that there's some things that are very precious and something that's very important. So I kind of do a lot of research and analysis on how stories impact the world we live in today. And I also run a nonprofit organization called Weird Enough Productions. We currently have a campaign called Nerds for Literacy, where we are fundraising $100,000 to donate books to kids at underfunded schools and libraries. So we launched about 2 weeks ago. We're currently $72,000 into our $100,000 goal. And that is what's dominating majority of my stress right now, trying to do this fundraising thing.
Yes, fundraising can be tremendously stressful, but you're doing the great work. So best luck with getting those funds raised. You mentioned your book, Weirdo, and that was based on a lot of that was based on your personal experience growing up, right?
Yeah, 100%. So Weirdo, what I say is that 95% of what happened in the book is written exactly as it happened. There were a couple of things that were shifted or moved around, but it's based on my personal experience. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I was a really nerdy kid. And to me, the nerdy stuff was cool. So I thought that I was a cool kid, but I had to be informed. I found out that I was not I was not inherently seen as the cool kid. And that is certainly a path to walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that today in my life, my experience, I embrace weirdness. I embrace how I'm different than everybody else, and I'm proud of that. But as a young person, you don't want to be different, right? You want to be like everyone else. You want to be cool.
Well, I think fitting in is certainly the thing that you want when you're younger. But I also think the thing that causes stress for kids, and it's also kind of not fair to kids, is that we tell kids, be yourself. And it's like, bro, I'm 11 years old. I don't know who that is. Like, I don't know who me is. In fact, even if I did know who me was, I don't have the agency to actualize that sense of self in any significant way. So you're like, be yourself, be yourself. And I'm like, I haven't figured out who that person is yet. And I'm not really being given any tools to do so. I don't know who I am. All I know is how I want to feel. And I know I certainly want to feel like I fit in. I know that I certainly want to feel like a person that's attractive to others, a person that other people want to be around, a person that other people have positive things to say about. So even when you tell a kid, be yourself, if you're not doing any of the follow up work behind that, that can actually be bad advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've never really heard it put that way before, but you're so right. You don't really come into your sense of self for some time.
Yeah.
And expecting an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 15-year-old to know what that means to be yourself and to be proud, regardless. It's a tough ask.
Because it's not just who am I, it's also what am I allowed to be? Because you say, be yourself. And I'm like, you want me to be myself until I'm talking during class because there's something that I'm focused on more than what you're teaching. You want me to be myself until I'm running in the hallway because I have a lot of energy. You want me to be myself until I have focus on something that's not what you think I should be focused on at that given point in time. It's a little bit of a mean thing to do because you say, be yourself. But when I say be yourself, you don't know who that is. And I'm not going to teach you how to figure that out. Be yourself, but don't give in to peer pressure from the other kids around you. Simultaneously, do give in to the pressure that I give you, what I tell you to do. I don't want you to let other people influence who you are unless the other people influencing who you are me or your other teachers, or the administrators, or your parents, or any institution of authority. Let them influence who you are, but don't let the other kids influence who you are. You just got to be yourself until it creates a problem for me, in which case, cut that out. You are very disruptive and disorderly.
Absolutely. And the very last people that kids are looking at to be the model of who they're becoming when they're kids is the administrators and the adults and the people around them that they don't think are very cool at all.
I'm
Uh,
not gonna lie to you. I'm still at a point where the kids think I'm cool, like I do school visits and stuff, and they resonate with me a lot. I am fearing the moment I reach the time where a kid looks at me and is like, nah, he's washed. That guy, he's not. I don't need to pay attention to anything that he has to say. It is going to break my heart. So I'm going to deal with what I got for now.
yes, I feel that. I feel that. I've been out of the classroom for some time now. I stepped out of the classroom about 2016 and have been working nonprofit since. But I still got it. The other night at a drama rehearsal, one of the young people said, I want to be you. You have a vibe, you have an aura. And
Mm.
I'm like, yes, I still have it. It's still there. And also being able to work with young people like we do is I think tremendously important for us staying young and staying in a position where we're able to relate to kids and they can relate back to us.
Yeah, what I tell people, people are like, Tony, how do you say plugged in with what kids are talking about? I'm like, oh, I have a Discord and they make fun of me every day. The kids in my Discord, they are gremlins, let me tell you, little degenerates, the whole lot of them. And I started my Discord maybe like in 2020, like late 2020 when I was doing some content creation stuff. So there are kids in my Discord that showed up when they were first years in high school that are now like off to college and graduating like and entering their sophomore year. And I'm like, I feel very old. But what's funny is they grow up and then new kids show up and the new kids start roasting me. And some of my veterans are like, whoa, 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 whoa. We get to roast them like that. You don't get to roast them like that. Every once in a while I get especially unlucky and they kind of team up and start roasting me together. And that's a whole
Oh
thing.
my God.
But yeah, I think the privileges that I get to interface with kids, whether that's through my school visits and my online community and things like that, I certainly like to think that it's a mutually reciprocal thing. I'm listening to them, they're listening to me. I think for a lot of them, there aren't a lot of spaces where an adult will just be quiet and listen.
That's very true. Very true. And for real, listen, right? Like not
Yeah,
just pretend to listen, but to hear them,
yeah,
and to try and understand what they're going through. Now, in that space, where we're working in schools, or interacting online, or whatever other activities we're doing with kids, we have an opportunity to see how stressful life can be
yeah,
for them.
yeah.
How prevalent would you say that mental health challenges are for school age children, especially Black and Brown kids?
I think like outside of my opinion, right? If we look at the data, regardless of how I feel, negative determinants of youth mental health are the highest that they've been since we started measuring. Whether you're looking at youth suicide attempts, youth successful suicides, youth rates of anxiety, youth rates of depression, over 50% of kids say that they feel perpetually hopeless. Over 40% of kids say that they experience long term feelings of loneliness. You look at this kind of uh, landscape where kids have more technology than they have camaraderie. And that is not great for the brain. I remember there was a video game that I used to play. And in the game, it's what you would call a gotcha game, where like it's based on like this Japanese thing they call gachapon, where uh, you're like basically gambling. It's like a capsule machine. You put in your coin, you want one of the six capsules. You can't pick which one you get. One of them is going to come out. And there are video games that are based on that. And I remember playing the game and feeling this like weird buzz in my brain when I was hitting the button to roll for the character that I wanted. And I did a little bit of research around how the game is literally built and kind of rife with psychological triggers in order to give you that dopamine hit when you're rolling. And there was one character, like normally I don't spend any money on this game, but there was one character. I wanted this character so bad. I spent $80 to get this character. And when I got the character, but it didn't feel like a success. I felt gluttonous. Like I felt like I had embarrassed myself, like I betrayed my values. It felt terrible. And I put that game down. But today's kids, like in some cases from as early as 3 years old, are being handed tablets with that exact sort of predatory brain chemistry based structured dopamine simulation. And you go, man, they have trouble making eye contact. They don't really speak in full sentences. They can't handle conflict well. It's like, well, yeah, you put them on a platter for technology CEOs, and now you're blaming them as if the kid designed the tablet, as if the kid gave themselves the tablet. Like they didn't do that per se. I feel like as a society, we kind of weren't paying attention to technology in the way that we should have been, and now kids are the ones reaping the consequences of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you think that, based on what you've just cited there in terms of uh, data and statistics, that we have some proof of? Would you say that we're in a place of a mental health crisis for young kids?
100%. I think that's the phrase that the experts are using. What I say is that I'm an expert on my lived experience, and I'm an expert on what I see in my particular line of work. And based on my perspective and the things that fuel what I see, I would certainly say we're in the midst of a youth mental health crisis. But the people that are far more educated than I, that get paid far more than I, to specifically look at and put a pinpoint on these things, that's what they say. We're in the middle of a youth mental health crisis. And I think it's multifaceted in nature. Um, I think that there is no one particular silver bullet or solution, but I do think that literacy, positive representation, and giving kids the tools for self discovery and self actualization is going to be essential for any solution that we end up putting out. So for me, I'm like, that's my role in the ecosystem. I don't know what you guys are going to make. I don't know what you guys are going to build, but I'm going to do my part and make sure that they have access.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now you mentioned some suicide rates for kids being the highest they've been, and in your book Weirdo, you kind of talk a little bit about your own issues as a young person and your own attempts and your recovery, from there. Um, and I'm wondering if, because of the way the world is today and the environment around education, do you have any troubles with your book being banned? Are there people that feel that it's too mature? Are there people that feel like kids should not be hearing that?
It's very, very interesting. Um, I remember when I was writing Weirdo, there was a story that like really broke my heart. A kid named Seven Bridges, who committed suicide as a result of bullying because he had a medical condition. And I'm trying to make sure I don't misremember something, but I'm fairly sure he had something like a colostomy bag or something. There was like an accessory that he needed to wear and have on as a part of a medical condition that he had. And he was bullied for that so severely that he ended his own life. And he was under the age of 12 years old. There is another student named Haley Naylor who was also very young that committed suicide. And as I'm hearing all these stories, I'm writing my book, and I'm not in any way arrogant enough to believe that, like, well, if they had gotten my book, things would have been different, right? It's not that, but I think it kind of, out of a sense of helplessness, I'm like, I don't know what I have to offer to this issue that I care so deeply about other than my story. I don't know what else I have to get. I'm trying my best. So we get the book done. We start getting reviews. Reviews all looking are going pretty well, and I start to hear back from teachers a little bit that are like, I love this book. I just don't think it's appropriate for middle school. And I'm like, the book where I tried to kill myself in middle school isn't appropriate for middle school. Explain. Make it work. Make it make sense. There are kids in your middle school right now that are dealing with this. And maybe they talk to you about it. Maybe they talk to somebody else about it. Maybe they don't talk to anybody about it. Maybe their sleeves are long, so you don't see the scars of self-harm. Maybe they've gotten really good at masking. But it's irresponsible for you to say, I don't want my middle school students to have access to suicide prevention resources because I don't think my middle school students are responsible enough to hear about suicide. It's like you can feel how you want to feel, but the data is the data. And one of the most difficult lessons that I learned, not just as a writer, but also in the content that I create, is that no matter how clear cut the data is, I always have to cater to people's feelings. The data can be extremely clear about what the problem is, where it comes from, what's causing it, but there will be someone that is upset that I would even imply that a problem exists in the first place. And that person is the one that ends up being the gatekeeper or the one that has final say over whether this resource gets into a child's hands or not. So I've just gotten really good at walking that tightrope or balancing that tightrope. But on the flip side, the thankfulness that I see in a parent's eyes when they needed a book specifically to talk about suicide, when you're a parent dealing with that thing that no parent ever wants to deal with, that call that no parent ever wants to receive, that sense of like hopelessness. I think when I was writing Weirdo, I was thinking a lot about myself because I mean, like, I'm reflecting on my personal experiences. But as I get older and I start to think about like expanding my family, I'm like, how must my mom have felt to get that phone call, to find that out, you know? How helpless must my mom have felt? What was going through her head? Where was she looking for resources? And the fact that a parent in a time that dark and that stressful would reach for something that has my name on it and give it to the person that they care about the most in the world and it actually work, I think that makes every like gatekeeper that I've had to jump over or find a way around worth it every time. The outcome makes it worth it every time.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of naive idealism for some people that are trying to keep those resources away from kids. It would be nice to have a world where kids aren't experiencing that at middle school and they were as innocent as some parents or some even administrators would like to believe they are, or maybe our politicians even, but that's just not the case. And they need a resource that's showing them that there's, this is something you can overcome. There's more to this, keep going and giving them the hope that they need to move forward.
I think that in my head, I'm like, maybe it's less sensitive to me because I'm so close to it, you know? Um, Maybe as a survivor, there's an element of it that doesn't feel as as unthinkable to me because I'm like, oh no, it's thinkable. It's thinkable. It's attemptable. I have stood at that ledge. And also, I think that just because of my upbringing, I think There was a point in time, I think, when I was in college, I sat down with all my friends and all of us had tried at some point. And it was like, oh, we never really talked about this. This wasn't really a planned thing. It's just, oh, interesting. And I think about my friends that aren't here anymore, and about what I could have said to them, how I could have been there for them, what I could have done differently. Um, and when you have experiences like that, I'm like, you can't keep a resource like this away from the kids who might need it.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, kids today, we know we're probably about 2 weeks into the school year for most schools, maybe a little bit more for some others. And we know that times of change and transition can be especially challenging for some kids. Like, times like back to school, that they can be triggered. What do you think the unique mental health challenges are for kids in general, and in particular for Black and Brown kids that are making this transition right now?
So I think that academia in general is dealing with this very weird reckoning, and AI is kind of forcing it to. Um, because the way that AI is entering schools and the way that AI has kind of grown and advanced, um, kids are in a place where a lot of them are having trouble reading in general. And it's crazy because they're like, today's kids can't read. And it's like, you didn't teach them phonics. You taught them something else. They sat in class and listened to what they got taught. It's not like they just went to sleep in class for 4 years. They listened to what they were taught. But the thing that they were taught was categorically the wrong thing. How can you blame the kid for that? So now they're in a place where the tools that the tools that they were given are not adequate for the task in front of them. But Chat GPT is floating over here, and that's a tool that's in front of me. And that could help me with this thing that's in front of me. I'm much less concerned about the long form ramifications of that thing because in this moment, it'll get me this grade so that my teacher won't be mad at me and so that my parents will be mad at me and I'll be able to go hang out with my friends and I'll be able to get on the game and I won't be on punishment. I completely understand that thought process, and I hate how we villainize kids for that. It's like, bro, remember, no agency, no agency. They cannot make decisions for themselves. Any bad decision that they're making is a decision that exists in the context of a bunch of bad decisions that were made for them before they even kind of got to this point, right?
Right.
But when we look at I think the thing that education as an industry has to deal with that creates the stress on kids is that we don't actually know how to decide if a person's smart or not. Like, we don't know because you say, Tony, do not use AI on your assignment. AI is bad. And I go, okay. And I write my assignment and give you the assignment. And then you use AI to grade my assignment. So, like, AI is too evil for me to use it, but it's completely fine for you to use to grade my stuff. And I go, okay, well, how come you get to use it and I can't use it? It's like, oh, well, I already know the information and I have really limited time. I mean, I have limited time too. Well, your times are valuable than my time. I thought I was supposed to be using this time to like learn. But uh, you're using AI to grade assignments, but you don't want them to use AI to create assignments. And I would wager that the same reasons you tell a child, hey, don't use AI to do your assignment is why we shouldn't be using it to grade an assignment. Because if I write an essay and you run that essay through an AI grading system to determine how well I articulated my point, what culture and whose definition of intelligence was used to make the base that the AI is using as a part of its decision making process? What sort of behavior, what sort of words, what sort of mode of speaking becomes the determining factor or the kind of guiding star for what constitutes intelligence? And AI kind of brings that conversation into K-12 classrooms in a very particular way. I think standardized tests are basically that. Um, we can't standardize intelligence, and we know that we can't standardize intelligence, but schools and universities rely on standardized tests to determine who they're supposed to admit, even though schools and universities have increased their prices over 300% since the mid 90s. So you have the most money of any segment of the education system at all. Like pre-K doesn't have this type of money, K-12 doesn't have this type of money. You have the most money. And with that money, you're kicking the can back down to K-12. And obviously, K-12 wants their kids to be successful. So they're like, I have to prepare you for what they're testing for, even though I know that's bunk. And the difference is, when I was in school, my mama was so strict and I didn't have a lot of internet access. I didn't really figure that stuff out until I was in college. Today, there are 6th and 7th graders on Reddit having the exact conversation that we're having right now about how none of this matters. And you look at them and are like, why aren't they applying themselves? It's like, because the game is rigged, bro. I'm gonna go be a streamer. Frankly, the game is rigged. What are we doing?
We're, and to circle back to your AI, I'm thinking, not only are the teachers using the AI to do their grading while forbidding kids to do it, they're not taking the opportunity to, after they've made the decision to use AI, they're not taking the opportunity to teach kids how to use AI tools in a way that will help them, that is not academically dishonest, that will help them with the skills that they need help with. So it could be used as a tool, sure, if you use it the right way and you're not a hypocrite about it. And I know that some of our audience, for the work we do, some would agree 100% with you about standardized tests, and some would cringe a little bit at that because they want to know, well, if we don't have standardized tests, how do we hold schools and teachers accountable? How do we hold kids accountable for learning? What would you say to them?
It's a very good question. How do we hold schools accountable? How do we hold universities accountable for learning? I don't know, but they're making $40,000 a year in tuition at a budget school. Figure it out. Like, commission a study, put a task force together, relook at your core curriculum. It's like you're right. I don't know the answer. That's a question we should be asking, but I think it's a question that we should be asking. I'm gonna go look right now. Get one moment. I'm gonna type it in right now. I'm gonna do Vanderbilt just because Vanderbilt is a school that I know. I want to know how much Vanderbilt tuition is right now. Vanderbilt tuition for the 2023-2024 school year is $63,946 per year. You were making $63,000 per student, and there are thousands of students in your undergraduate body. I promise you, with all of the research access that you have, with all of the great minds that you have, you can figure something out. I guarantee. Put like a 1-year moratorium on building new athletic facilities and go figure it out. I promise it's possible. And I think that with standardized tests, it's like we need to be testing for something, but I always lean towards competency-based and project-based learning more than anything that I can do on like a multiple choice test. But doing that means that we have to be very clear about, what do I actually want you to be able to do? I can't, like, it's easy for me to give you a multiple choice test and be like, what's 1 + 1? What's 4 × 3? What's 8 × 8? But when I have to think critically about, I'm teaching you your multiplication tables to accomplish what? In the real world, I want you to use your multiplication tables for what? And that question is a little harder to answer. Not so much for multiplication tables, because like there are lots of ways to use your multiplication tables daily, right? But I know that I'm teaching you this because I want you to go into the real world and be able to do what? And I think that those competencies are where we should be investing, or where we should be investing a lot of our time. Like, I think about literacy. Literacy rates are low for a variety of reasons. But one thing that gets me in trouble a lot is that, like, I'm at war with the canon all the time. If you look at literacy rates across the US, we've never been at a point where more than 65% of kids in the US actually know how to read. Like, they're low right now, but we've never been in like passing territory. If we were being graded on this, we've always been at an F In general, if we're going by the traditional grading scale, we've never been super successful in literacy. And I go, well, if the technology has changed, if the kids have changed, if the teachers have changed, if the schools have changed, but the books haven't changed, what does that mean? If you've been having them read the same books for the last 50 years, what does that mean? You got to look yourself in the mirror and ask, do I want them to know how to read effectively, or do I want them to be able to tell me the plot of the Brothers Karamazov? Which one do you want? Do I want them to be able to effectively use speech to communicate ideas, or do I want them to be able to summarize the Scarlet Letter in Pride and Prejudice? And I think very often, many people, the answer is the latter. I want you to be able to summarize Pride and Prejudice because I think Pride and Prejudice is very important for any educated person to know. And I would rather you be uneducated than not be able to quote Pride and Prejudice. And that is an active choice that many literature curriculums are making. So for me, I'm like, what's the competency, man? What do we actually want them to be able to do? But like that question gets really scary because it's like, if what I actually want you to be able to do is engage with complex text, but you engage with a complex text that's not my complex text, what that means is that it's possible for you to be very smart and intelligent without touching any of the things that I think you should know. What that actually means is that it's possible for you to be a very well spoken, very strong reading ability, strong writing ability individual without touching Shakespeare, without touching Dickens, without touching the Brothers Karamazov. Oh, no. And there are some people for whom you say that and they're like, no, no. They need Romeo and Juliet. How else will they notice when that episode of Family Guy that they're watching makes a Romeo and Juliet reference? It'll be horrible if they don't know, if they can't reference that thing. And I'm like, I don't know, bro. The whole institution's kind of burning down. I think we got to get real clear about what we need and what the choices are. And if the canon ends up being something that you can go find for enrichment on your own personal time, then that's just got to be what it is. If the stories that you call timeless are only timeless when they are subsidized by public education curricula enforced on every child, I'm sorry, bro, they're not timeless.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we talk about proficiency in literacy and numeracy a lot. And we wring our hands and we talk about how kids just aren't meeting the standards that we need them to meet, and how the schools are terrible, the teachers are terrible, the situation is terrible, everything is terrible. But you've hit it right on the head there. Isn't it the goal that every kid know how to read, to write, to communicate in complex ideas, no matter what they're dealing with, whether it is a news article, whether it is a graphic novel, whether it's a piece of the canon that they actually do enjoy, or whether it's something completely out of the box. That's the goal of education, is to teach somebody to be able to think and communicate in ways that have nothing to do, no dependency whatsoever on any piece of a reading or any textbook or anything like that. That's just like a tool, a mechanism to get you there, a vehicle. But the vehicle could be anything.
A universal theme that you can only get from one place isn't universal. It's the thing you can only get from one place. And what's interesting is, for like, when it comes to literacy in general, literacy is one of the only places where I see this conversation had. So I drive a Toyota vehicle, right? I use my vehicle every day to get from point A to point B. When it was time for me to get in the car and learn how to drive my car, nobody said to me, Tony, you don't know how to drive a Ford Model T. Therefore, you are not qualified to drive. Nobody said that to me. Literacy is one of the only places where we say, I value your understanding of historic stuff that is more difficult for you to understand and be interested in, more than I value your ability to actually do the thing. And when I talk to literature people about that, one of the things that they say is like, well, the canon does have a place. The canon is really important. We can't have people walking around saying things like Frankenstein's monster without having actually read Frankenstein. And I'm like, this is true. I agree with you. So when they decide that's the field that they want to go to, when they get to college, the place that's charging $63,000 a year, colleges can revamp their curriculum to make sure that whatever core texts are necessary for a classics education are present there. But the bottom line is there are a lot of kids that are going to go into trades. There are a lot of kids that are going to go down different career paths that aren't inherently going to center the classics. And if my options are you don't know the classics and you can't read, or you can read, but you don't know the classics, I'm going to pick the latter every time because I think that's more important.
Right, absolutely. So with kids today, like you said, they're out there talking. The jig is up. They know that
Yeah.
the system is fixed. They know that things don't make sense, and they can see through a lot of that. They are dealing with some hypocrisy in their education, and maybe they're not even proficient in reading. They're not literate in the way that we need them to be thriving kids. All right. So
Mhm.
this is what we're dealing with in schools. Like, no wonder when you're leaving your home and coming back into that situation right now during this time. Not to mention the political environment around education and all the changes that are coming into play, shifts that are making things like whether or not you're going to have a lunch and breakfast available, or whether or not you can read your favorite book from the library, or will they
Mhm.
be removed, whether or not there are going to be enough teachers, and how big your classrooms sizes are going to be. All of those things are at play right now because of the politics in the world. A lot of very stressful things for kids. So what do we as parents, as educators, what tools do we have to help kids navigate the kinds of stress that they're dealing with today, whether it be in school or in their home life?
I think when it comes to young people navigating stress, I think what we have to do is we have to be present before the problem appears. So for a parent, you have to create a positive feedback loop of communication, knowing or demonstrating to your child that it is safe for them to come to you with issues and complex topics before the problem happens. And frankly, I'm not a parent yet. More power to y'all, man. That sounds so stressful. What a tightrope to walk, right? Easier said than done. But on paper, I think it starts with that. I also think that we have to give kids the ability to we have to give kids opportunities to discover who they are, and we got to give them a little bit of agency, which is crazy. My mom's really strict. My dad's really strict. They're like, agency, I don't even know what that means, but in my house you follow my rules, right? But I think it's not about letting the kid run around and do whatever they want. It's just, I need you to be able to determine how things feel for you. I didn't think critically about the feeling of joy until I was like in my early 20s studying abroad in Japan, when there was nobody really around and I didn't have to answer to anybody. And I was like, oh, what do I want to do today? Oh, I can want things and they don't have to be connected to anything financial or academic or occupational. I can just want to go sit in the park because I want to go sit in the park. And that's just something that I'm allowed to do. Um, One way that I know myself a lot is that I'm a bath guy. At my house, I have a soaking tub. I get bath bombs from Lush, and when the day has been long, I know exactly where I'm gonna be, sitting in the tub. I'm chilling. I'm relaxing because that's how I regulate. But a lot of kids aren't given permission or space to, number one, be able to feel their emotions, and number two, be able to regulate their emotions. So when stress shows up, dog, I'm not allowed to do anything. I've been emotionally constipated for my like entire life. I'm dealing with this stress, but like I can't even have a conversation with my mom about something that she said to hurt my feelings. What am I supposed to do with all of this stuff? Um, you gotta you got to give them room for that. And I honestly think that's the cheat code to a successful life, because for me, my goal always is to live a life that's rooted in joy. I want to do the things that make me happy. The only way that I can do that is if I know what makes me happy. The only way that I find that out is by trying new things, by spending time with myself, by giving myself room. Like joy is a feeling the same way putting your hand on a hot stove is a feeling. What does joy feel like? And once I know what that feeling is, within reason and within healthy guidelines, parameters, boundaries, I can put together a path that allows me to do the things that make me happy in a sustainable way. Um, I think that's what self actualization does. That's what self understanding does.
Right. And you mentioned being like feeling versus regulating. And a lot of times where we get stopped up as adults is expecting a kid to regulate their emotions often means suppressing or shoving them down and not feeling and not dealing. So emotional regulation doesn't always look neat. It doesn't always look quiet. Sometimes you have to give them room to feel first. And we fall short, I think, as adults in that area in particular, where we're helping kids learn how to do things like take a bath or find the things that make them recover after a tough day or recover after a tough experience. And like you said earlier, it's things that we don't really find for ourselves until we're young adults or maybe even older adults sometimes, figuring out where the joy is, how to regulate ourselves, how to know when we've reached our limit, um, and how to bounce back from experiences that could be somewhat traumatic or stressful or challenging. So would you say like parents not only starting early and opening up that dialogue early and creating a safe space, but helping kids deal with big feelings, helping kids learn strategies for regulating, and helping kids learn a little bit about what wellness is and how to make themselves well as they travel through our education system, as they travel through their life.
It's I think it's a group effort.
Hmm.
We want kids to be healthy, fully realized people. We have to be healthy, fully realized people. We have to surround ourselves with healthy, fully realized people. We have to adopt some of these habits ourselves, but before the kids do. And someone's listening to this, and someone's like, "This is real tough talk coming from somebody that's not a parent." And listen, I get it. I'm not. I ain't trying to tell you how to parent. What I am saying, like what my hypothesis is that when you are a full person, it's probably easier to raise a full person than if you're not a full person. If you
Hmm.
are a half person or a quarter person.
What we did talk a little bit about your feelings about the education system. Is there any one thing that you would, if you had a magic wand and could change something about the way that we do education, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, standardized tests are gone. They're done. They're gone. If a child is expected to give 12 years of their life to your system of schooling, parents are expected to show up every day and drop them off real early in the morning. And like I'm from Atlanta, so number one, there was traffic, and number two, my dad was in that car rider line. Let me tell you something. He never let me know it, but I now looking back on it, I'm like, I know that man was tense. If you have all these expectations for kids and their families to totally restructure their life around making sure that they are in alignment with your definition of what academic rigor looks like, then you owe it to those people to come up with an actual way to gauge and measure that academic rigor. Because right now, at least 50% of our society is just burnt out gifted kids, because what you taught them how to do was study to the test, understand the test, do well on the test. And 3 weeks later, I don't even remember what was on the last test. I'm actually focused on the other thing. And some people, uh, they have a point of view where they're like, well, yeah, that's learning. That's the process. That's what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, no, I think that's what happens when the college board is like so financially influential. I think that's what that is. You gotta come up with a different way. You got to come up with a different way to measure this stuff. And that doesn't mean lowering standards. It means getting more precise about exactly what it is we are measuring and talking about. And that's I got a magic wand. That's what I'm doing day one. These tests are gone. Because what are you even? You sit me down in class and I got to do a test. And I live in a part of town where crime is really low, where my mom stops and gets Starbucks for me every morning, and where all of my classmates have parents that are at director level, vice president, C-level positions, and we sit down and we do our tests. And then across town, the kid who didn't get to eat this morning, that's wearing a shirt from his older brother that's too big for him, sits down and takes the same test. And you got the audacity to send out test scores and be like, oh, you scored in the 99 percentile. You did better than 99% of other kids. It's like, well, yeah, my life is better than 99% of other kids. So, yes, I have time to come tap dance for you better than all of the other kids. Like it doesn't even make sense. If we were in nature, if I was a scientist and I said I am going to explore the capacity of different types of beetles, and I took a beetle in an environment where there was a lot of resources and a beetle in an environment where there wasn't. And I said the beetle that has a lot of resources does better than the beetle that doesn't. So we should invest in the beetle that already has the resources. We should give scholarships and opportunities and jobs to the beetle that already has the resources, because that's what the data says. You would go, that's bad science. You would tell me that my experiment wasn't structured properly and that I need to go recalibrate my instrument. And I think that's what needs to happen. You need to recalibrate your instrument. No standardized test, bro. No standardized test.
As you're here talking, I'm thinking to myself about it. It just takes a little common sense, right? The way adults learn. If you think about like when there are no standardized tests and when there is no one measuring you, and you want to learn something, and you learn in a way that is joyful and in a way that is pleasurable to you, you choose what it is that you learn, and think about the depth of the learning that we have as adults. Now, how do we apply that back to the kids that looks different? Because anyone can take a test, and frankly, on a multiple choice test, you can guess well. It doesn't always show learning. It gives us something to measure. I don't doubt that.
And
But
that's what they teach us to do. We didn't even get into that part. It's a standardized test. And if I have money, my family can pay for me to take a practice version of the test 3 or 4 times. And then I do better than the kid who's seen these questions in this format for the first time. And you pat me on the back like, good job, Tony. That doesn't make any sense. um, I think in order for the stuff that you just brought up to happen, the required, but also probably won't happen thing is that we have to decouple public education from the needs of the private sector. When I was younger, I started to notice patterns. People, when I was in elementary school, they were like, T, you should be a doctor. And doctors make a lot of money. You should be a doctor. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll be a doctor. And then when I get to middle school, they're like, medical school is really expensive. You should be a lawyer. And I'm like, lawyer, law. I talk a lot. I can argue. I can be a lawyer. And then by the time I got to high school, they were like, the lawyer, that entire legal infrastructure is overly saturated right now. Law schools are getting really expensive. You know what you should do? You should be a coder. Did you know that Google has 6-figure jobs that go unpaid because they can't find people that have the qualifications that they're looking for? So you get all these national programs that are like, we can teach kids from the hood to code. And if we teach them how to code, then it unlocks financial prosperity and blah, 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 because they get to have access to these jobs, which is true. I understand the logic, and programs like that did really good work that created on-ramps and opportunities for people. But now what's everybody saying? Oh, AI is taking coders' jobs. They said that an AI logic model can do the work of a junior level developer. So if no junior level developer is getting jobs, and how are they going to become senior level developers? You need to be the person that does maintenance on the AI. Or now they flip it. They're like, have you considered a trade? Because we're actually going to need plumbers, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's crazy how instead of giving me the knowledge that I need to make a decision for myself about what I want to do, every time somebody in Google is like, dang, I could use some more of these, instead of telling them, okay, increase your pay, the pay that you're offering, fix your pipeline, or start a training program. Instead, it's like, oh, how do I restructure the entire K-12 ecosystem to make them conveyor belt products for you? And that's how we get stupid stuff like standardized tests. That's where it comes from. Like, and I'm like, you got to decouple it from the private sector. What are we doing? Are we trying to make educated and fully realized citizens, or are we trying to make the next leg of the workforce? And money's important. We live in a capitalist society. You got to be able to get a job to support yourself, and understanding how your talents and your passions fit in a financial ecosystem is a very important tool for kids to have. But I don't think that's what they're being taught. I think they're just being told the jobs are over here, go get them. And then after 3 to 5 years, when the industry moves and goes somewhere else, they're having nervous breakdowns because I spent the last 12 years of my life prepping to do this thing. And you didn't teach me how to do anything else. And now it's my fault.
But
I'm
you
on
look
my
at
soapbox. I'm sorry.
a few weeks ago, I read an article that was actually outlining the 6 or 7 skills that we now have to retrain ourselves with so that AI doesn't take our jobs. And it's getting scary. So it's to the point where there are certain things, and we're full circle maybe because it's back to medical profession. People don't want AI doing their medicine, so you're safe. So we're gone full circle back to be a doctor with that. But that was one of the professions that are safe is that, and also those people who code for AI and train AI and understand how to use AI. So becoming an expert on AI makes you somewhat safe because they can use you to build their products. It's quite a world. It's quite a world. Now, one thing I'm thinking, we've had a lot of conversations recently about the state of the world, and the constant barrage of negativity that's in the news, that's in the media. The messages are coming, and how we can help kids deal. Not necessarily protect them from it, but help them to feel safe and help them to thrive in the world with all of this like fire hose of negative media coming at them, things that are truly scary, and especially kids who are seeing their own communities affected most. How would you suggest helping kids deal with the stresses of that? This very real political environment that is harmful to some people, and they're dealing with this every day as they're trying to grow up and be successful students and be thriving, productive adults in the world.
Ironically, I think the solution for this lies in the place that gets cut first, the humanities. Oh man. Um, I think it is human nature to seek to be understood. That's kind of how we started this conversation, right? It's human nature to want to fit in. It's human nature to want to like be the cool kid. All of this is human nature. And I don't think we should be like demonizing those feelings. But I think number one, we have to acknowledge that today's kids are dealing with a world that no one else has had to deal with before. I can fall asleep on the bus. And while I'm asleep, someone can take a 15-second video of me snoring. And in the 1 hour time that it takes the bus to pick up all the other kids and actually get us to school, that video has been seen by over 20,000 people. And those 20,000 people, with no understanding of me, who I am, what I do, can all say terrible things about me, and I don't even have any recourse to get said video removed. Nobody has had to deal with the world like that before. That has never been the case. I can't even go to a party that one of my friends threw and do a crazy dance, because if I do my dance too crazy, somebody's going to record that. And they are farming clout off of ridiculing me. And even while my feelings are being hurt, they're getting the dopamine and the serotonin from the fact that the video that they're doing is performing well. We're in this really weird technological ecosystem. And I think the only way, or the something that is going to be essential to build survival from that, or to overcome that, is we have to have a sense of self that is not based online. Um, I have over 1 million followers. I care about all my people, all 1.2 million of them. I care about them. It means something to me that they would stop what they were doing and take 30 seconds out of their day to watch what I have to say, or click that follow button and sign up to hear more of what I have to say. If even one of my followers is like, "Oh, I didn't like how you said this," or "I don't like how this came off," I am open and empathetic enough to hear it. I can receive it, right? But my sense of self is so strong that even though I am open to hearing what you have to say, you don't get to define who I am. I got in an online spat with somebody the other day, and they were like, I would expect someone with a platform as large as yours focus on positivity. And I'm like, that's the issue right there. Don't expect nothing from me. You don't know me. What are you expecting anything from me for? You take what I give. I'm giving you something, and it's your decision whether you want to accept it or not. But to expect something of me, what audacity. I've never spoken to you. I have no connection with you. I don't, we have not interfaced in any way. This comment where you were telling me that you expect better of me is the first time that you and I have had any form of communication, and yet you expect something of me. Imagine if my entire sense of self was beholden to other people's expectations. With 1.2 million people, I would be in an asylum. I would go crazy. But my sense of self is not rooted in somebody else's point of view or what they expect of me. I have support systems around me that love me, that want the best for me, and that can hold me accountable in the times I need to be held accountable. And I also like am critical enough of myself and I'm aware of myself to understand that it's possible for me to be wrong sometimes. And when I'm wrong, I need to do something about that. There's remorse that needs to happen. There's learning that needs to happen. And I'm capable of understanding that. But imagine like if any of the 1.2 million people that I care about and that I listen to could randomly show up one day and be like, Tony, you're a terrible person because I have decided that you're a terrible person based on 2 minutes of your content that I've seen. You're a terrible person and you should feel terrible about yourself. And imagine if I actually did. Man, that would be a horrible existence to live. But we aren't giving kids the tools to have that same individual fortitude because we are not giving them the opportunity to self-actualize and demonstrate agency and figure out who they are so that when they end up on the internet and somebody has something to say, they know how to let it roll off. And it's not just negative stuff either. And how do I put it? I don't want to be inappropriate, but there are young women that are minors with very large audiences of grown men on the internet. And they will say whatever they can say that is not going to get Chris Hansen to pop up outside of their house. But wherever that line is, they'll walk right up to that line and they'll stand right there. When you're 16, 17 years old, I need you to have a sense of self to understand I am who I am. And these people on the internet that want me to do things that benefit them and not myself so that they can feel something is not my responsibility. But it kind of goes back to it goes back to what we to what we were talking about before, because if I teach you how to have that firm sense of self and you can say no to a million people on the internet, that also means you can say no to me. It also means you can say no to mom. It also means you can say no to Principal Jenkins. And I think a lot of people don't want kids to be that firm in themselves because it means that you have to speak to them like human beings and not like inmates.
Right,
um,
right.
but I, if you want them to survive, I feel like that's what you got to give them.
Mhm. So if you had an opportunity, and you do obviously with your large platform, and even here with us today, to speak to kids out there who might be struggling right now with their own self image, with stress of the world, stress of technology, stress about making decisions, going back to school, anything like that. And the feeling of belongingness wherever they are, whether it be online or off, what would be something that you would want them to know right now that might impact the way they move forward?
I think so. I'm a big anime fan. There's a very popular manga and anime called Naruto. And in Naruto, there's an arc that everybody really likes that happens towards the beginning of Shippuden. And the theme song for that arc, the majority of the song is in Japanese, but there's a lyric in English that says, "The closer you get to something, the tougher it is to see it." And for me, I think I look at that both ways. Number one, when you're extremely up close to something that feels negative for you, like this book, for example, is a relatively small book, but if it's right in front of me, it clouds my entire field of view. I can't see around it right now, even though it's something this small, right? Um, so what I would say is you are going to encounter negative things, and sometimes you are so close to them that they are going to feel like they are all encompassing and that there is nothing on the other side of them. But the farther you get away from something, the smaller it gets. So you got to keep moving forward. But also with positive things in your life, the closer you get to something, the tougher it is to see it. So you might be on the cusp of something really positive, and you don't even know it's there because you're that close to it. I think maintaining a perspective like that can go a long way.
Absolutely. So, if people want to hear more about what you're doing, about your work, a little bit more about the life experience and knowledge you bring to the table, where can they find you?
So I am at Tony Weaver Jr. on all platforms. If you were interested in hearing me yap, be forewarned, I do be yapping. I yap quite a bit. And I'd also really appreciate it if you took a look at Nerds for Literacy at nerdsforliteracy.com. We're trying to do something to help the children.
Excellent, excellent. And where can we find your book?
Weirdo is everywhere. We're in independent bookstores. We're in Barnes and Noble. We're on Amazon. If you go to bookshop.org, you can find a local bookstore that's selling Weirdo near you. And that's we're all over the place. If you go in a store and they don't have Weirdo, are they even a bookstore? I thought you
Right.
sold books here. Why is Weirdo not here?
Oh, well, I want to thank you again for being here today and talking with me. I've so enjoyed this conversation, especially because you wore your horns. Um,
Well, I'm grateful for your time. I hope I didn't yap too much.
Oh, absolutely not. I loved every minute of it. And for those of you watching, if you like conversations like this and want to hear more, please do like, subscribe, and share this and all of our interviews with your friends. And come back next time for another episode of Always Learning.